All right, people are still settling in, getting into the virtual room, so give it just another minute or two. All right, everyone, we'll get started. I think we still are expecting some more people to join, but we'll start getting oriented to what we're doing here today. I want to thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate your time and energy and wisdom for this purpose, and we're excited to be with you this afternoon. So my name is Evan Schmidt. I'm the CEO of Valley Vision, and the meeting that you're in right now is a workshop on data research and evaluation for the Community Economic Resilience Fund. And we're going to give you a little bit more context about that, but just to speak to a really high level, the Community Economic Resilience Fund is a new statewide program. Our region is applying for a $5 million planning grant to support inclusive and sustainable economic development. So as part of that planning grant, let me say this, Valley Vision is submitting an application on behalf of the region. And we have until July 25th to complete this application. So we're doing a series of these workshops in order to get input and thoughts and wisdom from you all about these different topical areas. So today's topical area is data research and evaluation, like I mentioned. And the other ones that we will be convening this week or have already last week is the governance committee, community engagement, and capacity building for our region. So again, want to really thank you all for being here. And I think I'll do a little bit more to set the context, but I think first I'd like to do some introductions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around our virtual room just in order of how I see people's squares and ask you to introduce yourself, just your name, your organizational affiliation and your role, and then maybe where you are in the region. So we can so everyone can get a chance to get to know each other just a little bit and have a sense of who's in the room. So I introduced myself already, Evan Schmidt, CEO of Valley Vision, and now I'm going to turn to Lisa, who's first on my screen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Lindman. I'm on the board as a volunteer for the Yuba County Resource Conservation District, and then I'm the executive director for Cedar Beats Regional Land Trust.
Hey, Lisa. And Tina.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tina Glover. I'm with the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, or SACOG. I serve as their demographer, and I'm kind of the all-around data person. Really excited to be here.
Thank you, Tina. And we're going to need to hear more from you later in the meeting. And Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Swan with the Yolo County Office of Education in the College and Career Readiness Department, supporting K-12 and adult education CTE programs.
All right, thanks for being with us. And Professor P.
Hi, everybody. I'm Natasha, AKA Professor P. I'm with CMC Workforce Development Team as Grant Operations Manager and Success Coach. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. And Aaron.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Aaron Wilshere with the Center of Excellence for the Greater Sacramento region, based at the Los Rios Community College District, where I serve as the manager of our program, provides labor market information, other kinds of research service for the community college system.
Thanks, Aaron. And Gary.
I'm Gary Simon. I'm chairman and founder of Clean Start, a nonprofit business accelerator to spur the growth of more clean tech companies in the Sacramento region.
Welcome, Gary. Thank you. And Leo.
I'm Leo. I'm the public policy coordinator with the Sacramento Metro Chamber.
And Carrie.
Hi, I'm Carrie Whitlock with the city of, there are multiple Carries. That's always
there are, sorry about that. Carrie Whitlock.
I'm Carrie Whitlock. I'm with the city of Elk Grove. I'm the strategic planning and innovation program manager, and I do a lot of our work around environment sustainability and a lot of our data stuff.
Right, thanks for being here. And Mike Schremer.
I'm Mike Schramer with California Capital Financial Development Corporation. We're a CDFI in Sacramento that does loans on small business assistance.
Thanks, Mike. And Tiffany.
Hello, I'm Tiffany Wilson. I'm a self-employed research and evaluation consultant based in Sacramento. So helping folks conduct research, use data to make data-informed decisions, understand their outcome.
Me. And Megan.
I'm assuming you mean me, Evan.
Yes, please.
Okay, hey everybody. Megan Van Forest. I'm the City of Sacramento's Creative Economy Manager, and I lead the Office of Arts and Culture. So nice to meet you all.
Thanks for being here. And I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce your name right, but Alcides Hernandez.
Yeah, you say it just right. Alcides Hernandez. I'm Revenue Strategy Manager at SMAD. Our group oversees law research and forecasting, and also the rights department. Pleasure to be here.
Great, thank you. And Darlene, or I'm sorry, Doreen.
Hi, Doreen Hackler. I have my own consultancy, worked on the actual neighborhood and economic action agenda that the city of Sacramento adopted, and do equitable economic development in my own consulting practice. So just happy to join the conversation in my own area.
Great, thanks for being here. And Shira Lane.
Hi, I'm Shira Lane. I'm the CEO and founder of the Atrium. We're a creative innovation center for sustainability. And right now we're kind of starting to convert to a community development center as well. We help local creatives that are building sustainable businesses, creative ideas to help elevate them and make it come true.
Thank you. And Fernanda, sorry.
No problem. Good afternoon. My name's Fernanda. I'm with the City of Calusa, and I'm the city's grant writer and responsible for economic development as well.
Great. Thanks for being here. And Nate.
Good afternoon, everybody. Nate Olsch here from Community Strong Strategies. We currently are working on the Sacramento Inclusive Economic Development campaign. So here to join to support our operations here today.
Great, thanks. And Norma.
Norma Santiago, representing the South Fork of the American River Collaborative. I'm a steering committee member as well as a charter member. We focus on 3 particular strategies in building fire-safe communities, looking at economic development as it relates to biomass processing, and things of that nature, forest management and watershed protection.
Great, thanks, Norma. And Matt Miller.
Good afternoon, Matt Miller, Research and Strategy with Greater Sacramento Economic Council, serving the Sac Metro and Yuba City Metros.
Great, thanks for being here, Matt. Michael Bell.
Afternoon all, Michael Bell representing the California Mobility Center as the Workforce Development Director. We're headquartered out of the Depot Park facility in South Sac. Thank you.
Great, thanks Mike. And Shika Bertel.
Hi everybody, I'm Shika Bertel. I'm from GSEC, Greater Sacramento Economic Council. I'm a research analyst here.
Great, thank you. And Achini.
Hi everyone, my name is Achini Bandara. I'm Development and Strategic Partnerships Director for Grid Alternatives North Valley.
Great, thank you. Now I'm going to turn to the Valley Vision team, first with Alana.
Hi everybody, my name is Alana. I'm a project associate here with Valley Vision. I work with the leadership and civic engagement impact area, and I will go ahead and pass it to Isa.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Isa Avancenia. I'm Valley Vision's Manager of Research and Policy. Happy to be here with you all.
Oh, Isa, you went to mute.
Oops. Hi, everybody. Isa Avancenia, Manager of Research and Policy. Happy to be with you all today.
Thanks.
Sorry about that.
No worries. And Brittany.
Hello, everybody. I'm Brittany. I'm the Executive Associate here at Valley Vision, and happy to be here also.
Thanks, Brittany. Kathy.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kathy C. Chu, and I'm a project associate for the Clean Economy Portfolio. Nice to meet you all.
Isabel.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isabel Dela Cruz. I'm the project manager for our Workforce Development Portfolio. Excited to hear and have you all participate in this.
Thank you. And Nidhi.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nidhi George, a current intern at working under the.
Thank you. We had a little bit of gap, but thanks for being here. And Renee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Renee John, Director of Workforce Development. Happy to see you all here.
All right, and I want to thank the whole staff team for Valley Vision. A special shout out for Isa and Alana in particular for putting together these materials and doing so much work on our workshops this week. So thank you so much to this excellent staff. So did I miss anybody? Boxes moved around a little bit, so I hope that I got anyone, but chime in now if I missed you.
Carrie.
Carrie, sorry, Carrie. I can't seem to, your video wasn't on. I can't seem to get exactly everybody on our team. Sorry about that.
The other Carrie. Hi, everyone. I am Carrie Mcdonald. I'm the Senior Director of Business Operations here at Valley Vision.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, and I see that Carmen just joined. Carmen, I'm going to give you a minute to settle in, and then we just wrapped up introductions. I'll let you introduce yourself quickly. But maybe first, let's see. First, I want to note that this meeting is being recorded. This is really for our own notes and our own record keeping. So, so just wanted you to be aware that will help us document the engagement that we're doing here. And let's see, is Carmen, are you still here? Oh, there you are. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carmen Nicole Cox. I go by Carmen, and I am Chief Counsel of Public Policy and Advocacy at United Way.
Great. Thank you for being here. Okay, do we want to go ahead and put the slides up? So we already introed a little bit. We're here for the Community Economic Resilience Fund to talk about data, research, and evaluation. I have to say, as we're going through the introductions, I'm feeling very excited by who's in the room and by the discussion we're going to have, because data, research, and evaluation is my kind of foundational topic. So this is very exciting for me. And I have a few more comments to make about setting the context on our next slide, I believe. So as I mentioned, we are working towards submitting our planning phase application due July 25th, which is right around the corner, as you can see. So I want to note that the input that we're doing and the work that we're doing now, this is all part of this framework of planning to plan. So we're going to get into the planning phase where we're going to have a lot more capacity and intentionality and ability to really flesh out what our priorities are, what some of our key topics are. And this stage is really about setting the foundation for our ability to do that and creating a pretty open-ended plan for our application to allow us to move forward to the next, move forward to that planning phase and get the resources to dive into research and data and community engagement and other priorities. So, I think as we are moving into the planning phase, the data and research and evaluation is a really important piece. So today is going to help us put some parameters and values to that and start to think about what assets we have, what challenges we have, and how we're going to begin to think about our priorities when it comes to data research and evaluation. So really key component of the project overall. We have our third bullet here that just says we don't have to figure everything out right now. We need to build this container, build a path forward, start to build a foundation of people who are interested in this and who can offer insight and be a part of the planning phase. So that's really our goal today. So let's see that it's going to be recorded. And a couple other things I want to note before talking about the agenda. The first one is that you know, I mentioned this at the top, that we have multiple of these subcommittees going on. And there's some of you, the idea behind that was really to allow people to engage in the topic they were interested in the most. And I know that there's some people that are coming to multiple subcommittees. So first of all, I want to really thank you for the time that you're devoting to this, whether you're coming to one or more than one. It's significant and we really appreciate that. Second, I want to say that there's, you know, there might be some redundancies. I don't think it's a lot, but as we go into the initial presentation, there's maybe 5 minutes or so of slides that you've already seen before if you've been to another subcommittee meeting. So I hope you'll take advantage of this virtual platform to do the things that you need to do, make yourself comfortable, you know, as we go through the presentation, if there are things that you've already heard before. And I just ask for your patience. Please bear with us as we're going through this. I think the last slide said messy but meaningful, or the slide here said messy but meaningful process. We have 3 hours set aside on our calendar today. I would say that it's up to 3 hours. Or, you know, our hope is that we get our work done before that, but wanted to make sure we, you know, put the container together in a way that we would have enough time if we need it. And then the last thing I'll say about our timing today, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the agenda. The first 45 minutes to an hour of this session is going to be a little heavier on presentation as we were prepping for this meeting, thinking about data and research in the region. This is a big topic. There's a lot of work out there, as you all know, that you know, really a lot of experts here in the room. So there is some context to be set. I think it'll be important to, you know, as we go to that next phase of discussion, to have that context, but it will take a little bit of time. So the first 45 minutes of this session is going to have chances for certainly questions, and you can put those into the chat at any time, but there will be a presentation there. And then just to talk in a little more detail about our agenda that's in front of you right now, welcome and introductions, we've done that. I'm going to turn it over to Isa in a little while to give a more detailed overview about CERF. We're going to talk about some of the values that we're setting. So we're going to establish kind of our research foundation. This is some of that presentation I was talking about. And then have time for question and answer. We're going to take a 5 to 10 minute break for everyone, and then we're going to really move into the phase of discussion. We're going to have breakout rooms to be able to do that. And then we're all going to come back for a brief report out. There's a Mentimeter activity. Mentimeter is a live surveying feature that will allow us to kind of get a pulse on some of your interests and priorities in the moment. We'll have final questions and answers and go to closing remarks. So with that, I think the next thing I want to do is introduce you to and give an opportunity for our co-leads to say a few words. So again, as Valley Vision staff, as we were preparing for this meeting, we really wanted to lean on some of our close partners and experts who are doing really highly relevant research in the region that we think provides part of the foundation. And I know there's a lot of you in this room that are doing a lot of really meaningful research, but we felt like this was a place to start. And so I'm going to give Erin Wilshere and Tina Glover a chance to talk a little bit about their research. I think you're all going to find it really valuable. So I'm going to turn it over to Erin first to set the stage a little bit.
Thanks, Evan. And it's great to see everybody on the Zoom today. It's a very exciting time with the CERF process, and I've been glad to attend several of the coordinating meetings put on by Valley Vision, and excited by the prep work that we've been doing to get ready for this workshop leading into the final stages of the application. So, I think there's really a wide range of opportunities around data and research to inform the planning process that we're going to undertake here. So I just listed a few of those here. I think they've come up in our discussions. Certainly there's others that we're going to look forward to hearing from all of you about. But this is, I think, an opportunity to revisit existing community, economic, and workforce planning assets, looking at our baselines from existing planning projects that we've got, not least of which is the SEDS prosperity strategy. Tina and I are going to be mentioning in a bit some of the baseline assets that our respective organizations have been working on. We'll continue to gather those assets here today and moving forward with all of you through the planning phase. Other items I've noted here really relate to our coming to some sort of common understanding as a community of stakeholders in a region about the issues that are laid out in the CERF. This isn't the first time we're addressing a lot of these issues. We're focused on high road jobs and economic equity, the triple bottom line, economic transformations for climate adaptation, the whole notion of just transition. So coming to some sort of common understanding about the frameworks and measures that we're going to be needing from these, from our existing planning assets and those that we need to learn about and adopt as touchstones for planning and tracking, I think is really critical. So Valley Vision's done a great job of convening regional researchers in a roundtable format. That's another key component that we can draw on here, the researcher roundtable. And we've been talking about, you know, regional indicators and tracking on our existing baselines. So the CERF really represents an opportunity to enhance and execute on those ideas. The last thing I want to mention here is that, you know, our work as research and community and data people is that, you know, our work is not prescriptive when we do research, of course. We're, as applied analysts, we're engaged in our community, we're responding to and informing the process at the same time. And ultimately, we're informing how the issues are framed, how projects are selected, but we're really responding to all of you, our community stakeholders and partners. So, you know, we want these investments to be shaped by community input and by data and research at the same time. So all of that's going to inform and shape this process. And I'm certainly glad to be a part of this. And thanks, Evan and Valley Vision team, and we'll continue to kind of follow you and support through the final phase of the application and the stakeholder meetings as we move forward through the first phase.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Erin. And what a great way of contextualizing the work that we're doing here and the goals that we have for this effort. Now I want to turn over to Tina Glover from SACOG for your thoughts on this effort and on the context around data and research in the region.
Right. So hello again, everyone. Just a little bit more information about me and the role that SACOG plays. For those of you that aren't familiar, SACOG is the Long Range Transportation Planning Agency, and we cover a 6-county region that is El Dorado, Placer, Sacramento, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba counties. So I want to say most of my work comes in covering sort of everything from small area to large area data. And so we do a number of things at SACOG that will feed directly into this process. And we're really excited about that. Very excited that we've been able to collaborate so much with so many other external groups. That's really been a main focus of SACOG for the last several years. And we've worked with the Valley Vision closely on many different projects, prosperity partnership, you name it. There are a lot of things in there. One of the things I really wanted to focus on about this opportunity is oh gosh, what excites me about it. So I am a data expert, shall we say, primarily on public data sets, Census Bureau data in particular. I've been serving as demographer at SACOG for 17 years now, and I've been tracking characteristics on population, housing, and employment across that time period. And my focus is really on the Sacramento region, and as we've defined it, the 6 counties. And I'll just add that we exclude the Tahoe Basin area just because they're a part of a bi-state planning agency called the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. Anyway, so my focus is on there, but I also look at how our region fits in with the state and at the national level. So we do a lot of comparisons on a lot of different kinds of metrics. So the thing that excites me about this is that, you know, sometimes because we're a special district government agency, we don't always have those avenues of communication with so many other groups. And it was really exciting for me to listen to everyone here and your introductions on, you know, who you work with and where you work and all of those kinds of things. Because honestly, there were some agencies or some organizations, I should say, that I've never heard from before or heard of. And I love that we have a way to come together and make something really good happen. So that's sort of my what excites me about this program. And then I also wanted to touch on something else that we had been discussing, which were what are some challenges might we face, you know, kind of going forward. So looking at this the CERF regional area, we'll be adding, or we have included our Colusa County and Nevada County. And I don't know a lot about those two counties. I did a quick census look just to get an overview and saw that Nevada County is just under 100,000 population and Colusa County is just about 22,000 population. And so I'm excited that we can branch out more and cover more areas. I'm a little concerned about some of the data restrictions we might have with smaller geographies. And Colusa County, I'm so happy that there are people here from that area. I really want to get to know more about Colusa County. And I think that we'll have a lot to offer one another in terms of how we move forward on this. And I think that while there might be challenges in publicly available data, I'm hoping there's going to be more community data or other, you know, perspectives that can get brought into this work. Let's see. Yes, and then hearing from a variety of folks, not just kind of our regular group of people who track different kinds of legislation or different kinds of issues in the community. This is a broader look at you know, what we can accomplish. So I think that's about it. I always have lots of things to say and would love to chat with anyone. So I will close it there and turn it back over. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. And I'll just, you know, I'll echo, I think this is a great opportunity to knit a lot of different things together, to welcome in new geographies, which is really exciting. So Nevada County and Colusa County and Tahoe area of El Dorado and Placer, really excited for the opportunity for all of us to work together and to really, really think about this larger region and where we can find opportunities together. So with that, I think that's a great segue to just get into a little bit more detail about CERF itself as a program. So I'm going to turn it over to Isa to do that.
Thanks, Evan. And hi again, everyone. Good to be here with you today. So I'm going to spend about just 2 to 3 minutes kind of recapping the basics of the CERF program. I know many of us are quite familiar with it at this point, but I always think it's kind of helpful to do a quick recap at the front end of these meetings. So as we noted earlier, the CERF program is a one-time use of state general funds that distributes a $600 million pot to regions across California. The kind of primary mission or objectives of the CERF are 3 things. So first, promoting equitable and sustainable economic development. The second piece is supporting inclusive economic planning that prioritizes equity, high quality jobs, and sustainability or low carbon industries. And third, aligning and leverage many of the other sources of federal and state funding that are coming down the pipeline in order to kind of maximize economic resilience overall for the region. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as a recap, our CERF designated Sacramento region includes these 8 counties that you're seeing in the map in front of you. So Colusa, El Dorado, Nevada, Placer, Sacramento, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba counties. The CERF program is taking place takes place in 2 phases. The first is the planning phase, and right now we are all in the process of putting together our application for the planning phase, hence the subcommittee meetings. In the planning phase, the planning phase period is about 18 to 24 months, and in the planning phase, each of the 13 regions gets $5 million to plan. And what that means essentially is 2 things. establishing a regional collaborative that includes representation from all the different counties, geographies, and communities in the region. And second, putting together an actual economic plan that sort of calls out or highlights, what are the initiatives or projects that the region is prioritizing in order to advance the goals of the SERF. And then the second phase is the implementation phase. So in the implementation phase, regions compete for the remaining $500 million amount in order to get funding for the different initiatives and projects that were identified as being priorities in the planning phase. So that's it for our quick recap of the kind of SERF program basics. Next, we're going to move on to a conversation around kind of setting our values. So if we could move on to the next slide. So in May and June, Valley Vision and our partners hosted a couple of kind of open to all lunch and learns with folks to talk about the SERF program and hear from folks on what their concerns and priorities were. And part of those lunch and learns were interactive sessions where we asked folks, what are some of the values that you see, or what are some of the traits that you see as being really important to the SERF process? And we took all that input from those different sessions and were able to kind of combine them into these big 5 values. And thank you, Alana. Alana is also putting them in the chat, so you're able to kind of access them even when you move on to the next slide. And really, we're starting off all of our subcommittees by kind of showing these 5 values. I'll read them out in a little bit. And our hope is that we wanted to kind of bring these together and show these to you all and hear from folks, are these values resonating with what you believe should be core to the SERF process? Is there anything here that you think is really missing? So I'll go through these really quickly. The first is equity. So being centered on those who are most marginalized. Inclusivity, ensuring that those at the table truly feel that they belong so that no community is left behind in this process. Transparency, openly sharing information and ideas to build a community of trust and shared understanding. Respect, respecting and acknowledging previous and ongoing work. And action, committing to creating action-oriented goals and timelines and following through with these actions. So I want to pause there. I know you're all hearing this just for the first time, and there will be kind of other opportunities as well to kind of react and provide feedback to this, but want to pause there and invite anyone to kind of speak up or put in the chat, do these values kind of resonate with what you think we should be core to our SERF process? Is there anything here that you think is off or you think might be missing? Michael. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if it's considered a value, but the program objective you had, number 1 listed there, referenced equity, but it also referenced sustainability or sustainable economic development. But I don't see that, and I noticed that's largely missing a lot of conversations about emphasis on sustainable actions or initiatives as a region, and making that as one of our core values for this type of work.
Thank you, Michael. I'm sorry, there was one other, Carmen, sorry about that. I think I might have cut you off earlier. Go ahead.
No. Michael used good manners and raised his hand. I am maybe gonna wait. I guess I appreciate the brevity of the value statements. So I guess, so anyway, I see equity and I realize it's not supposed to be a definition, but when we say we are centered on those that are most marginalized, I'm not sure if what we're really saying is that when we develop action plans, what we intend to do is do so with equity, because acknowledging that there are people who are most marginalized and that we intend for there to be some impact on them is not the same as actually doing equity. But maybe for the sake of brevity, that's just where we landed. And then similarly for inclusivity, we ensure those at the table truly feel they belong But really what inclusivity is also ensuring that, for example, those that we intend to help are at the table, right? So I assume that's what's meant there, but I'm just sharing out what comes up for me when I'm reading this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carmen. And yeah, I think that's an important kind of clarification, distinction, and something we want to make sure we're being clear about. I just want to note for folks the kind of feedback we're getting from this discussion about the values we're going to take and kind of incorporate into the 5 that you're seeing and turn them around and kind of make sure that that's getting factored into the final list that we have that's going to guide the rest of this process.
Also just want to note on the values, we're iterating kind of with each subcommittee. So we started with kind of governance, and these were kind of our governance values. And now we're adding, with this subcommittee, and we'll keep doing that all week. So, so really appreciate the feedback. And like Isa said, it's going to be kind of an evolution as we get towards the application that we put in. And then I'm sure it will continue to be a kind of a live evolution in the planning phase as well.
Thanks, Evan. Anything else from us before we move on? Again, there will be kind of other opportunities to provide feedback to this as well. I realize folks are hearing this for the first time, and certainly not expecting everyone to have all their input reactions prepared immediately. So I'll pause in case there's anything else folks want to add. All right. Alana, I think we can bring back bring up the next slide. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next piece of our workshop, we wanted to spend a little bit of time on what we've kind of termed as establishing our foundation. So as Evan noted earlier, at the front end of this workshop, you talk about data research and evaluation, and that is an incredibly kind of broad topic, really wide universe of different things. So we thought it was really important to kind of set the context, or part of setting the context of this meeting and this process was kind of talking about, ultimately what is the data research and evaluation goal that we are trying to achieve here? What is the framework through which we are trying to achieve that goal, and what specifically are kind of the requirements or activities that we have to undertake as part of working towards that goal. So we can move to the next slide. So this is a kind of diagram chart that sort of helps to illustrate that. So really our primary data research and evaluation goal is data gathering and evaluation that will help our region identify priorities and projects that will achieve the CERF's purpose. So as I noted earlier, the primary objective really of the planning phase is to develop a priority list of initiatives and projects that the region is committing to advancing in order to advance the CERF goals, and projects that will hopefully get funded as well in the implementation phase. So this is kind of our North Star when we're talking about data research and valuation. What is that work that has to be done that can help us then identify, what those priorities are that we want to advance? And the kind of framework through which we're trying to achieve that goal is inclusive economic development, particularly the way that it is characterized in the CERF program. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that is in the next slide. And then under that framework of inclusive economic development, you're seeing here in the kind of boxes, what are the actual requirements or activities that the CERF is asking the regions to undertake from a data and evaluation standpoint. So exactly, or data and research standpoint. So exactly, these are the things that we have to be doing to get us to that, to help us get to that ultimate goal. So these are, for example, a labor market analysis, a strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats analysis, an industry cluster analysis, and also a regional summary, which includes things like a climate and environmental impact analysis, a public health analysis, as well as an overview of our region's economy and where it is in terms of its economic development processes. And then the box you're seeing at the bottom, I think it's really important to note as well, and Eva mentioned this earlier, that in our region, there are a lot of existing research and data assets. You all are aware of this, of course. A lot of the work that a lot of folks in this room are doing is on working and creating these assets. And so a lot of that already exists. And so part of the work is going to be figuring out what are those assets that exist and how do we channel them or leverage them and make them part of this kind of bigger process. And you're seeing in the rectangle below some of the examples of that, and we'll examples of those baseline data assets that we have, and we'll go through those in a little bit more detail a few slides later. Next slide, please. So what do we mean exactly by inclusive economic development, in this context? So this is the way that the CERF program kind of creates this framework or outlines this framework for the different regions. So, the state recognizes that, as we're all aware, not all Californians have had the same opportunity to participate in the state's economy. And then with the pandemic that took place, the uneven kind of economic recovery trends from the pandemic sort of further exacerbated the income and other inequality in our state. So given that, the state is sort of recognizing and embracing these three things. So it's embracing economic equity as a goal, as a key goal for state policy. It's striving to enhance economic resilience, and it is trying to do more to support the development of a more inclusive and resilient regional economy. So sort of more concretely speaking, what does that actually mean? So you're seeing there the kind of third set of bullets. What that actually means is the state is adopting a regional approach. So recognizing that different regions and subregions have different needs, and meeting regions where they are to support their economic development process. It also means what the state refers to as a high roads approach. So favoring businesses that invest in their workforce, pay living wages, and engage in environmentally sustainable practices. It also means a community and worker-centered inclusive economic planning process. And finally, and this was also noted earlier, it means essentially including voices that we know have been traditionally left out of these more traditional economic development processes. Next slide, please. This slide just adds a little bit more information as to those kind of four activities or requirements that the CERF guidelines are asking for in order for us to respond to that ultimate goal that we have. And I won't take too long on this, but as I said, a regional summary that includes kind of an overview or a summary background of the demographic and socioeconomic conditions of the region, including climate and environmental impact, public health analysis, and economic development, or where the state is in its economic development process. Also a labor market analysis, so a snapshot of labor and workforce dynamics in the region, including major employers, occupations, wages, industry cluster analysis, so a snapshot of current major industries, as well as industry trends and projections, and a SWOT analysis, especially as it relates to kind of economic resilience and growing sustainable industry clusters. Next slide, please. So as I noted earlier, looking at this kind of goal and framework that we have that we're working towards, our region already has quite a few kind of existing baseline assets to support this work. And we're going to spend a little bit of time going through what some of these are. I'm going to bring back Tina and Aaron to kind of speak to a few of these. And with that, I will turn to Tina to start with talking a little bit about our SACOG's 2021 Regional Progress Report.
Hello again. I just put a link to the page that has the 2021 Regional Progress Report. It's available in a PDF, downloadable. We actually cover, a little less than 50 different indicators. I'm only going to show just a sampling of what we've done or what we have going on in that report. As a little bit of background, we generally do a regional progress report every couple of years. It's one of the first things that we do when we're looking at updating our 4-year MTP SCS, which is our long range transportation plan. So let's see, I already talked about the counties that we cover. The other thing to keep in mind is that we do a bunch of other We look at a bunch of indicators other than just transportation related because we know that things are so interconnected. So the data shown here cover the entire 6-county region. For the first time in 2021, we were able to report findings by race and ethnicity on a number of indicators, which has been really fascinating, and it's contributed a lot to the work that we're doing internally at SACOG with our race, equity, and inclusion working group. Thank you for the next slide. So like I said, I'm just sharing an excerpt of indicators available today, and oh, it's not showing up at the bottom. The report is broken into 4 different sections. Who we are specifically covers a lot of the demographics and socioeconomic kind of indicators. Then we talk about economic prosperity, vibrant places, and connected communities. And so this is just showing the 6-county population by census, race, and ethnicity categories, tracking from 2000 to the year 2019. This report was published in the early 2021, so it doesn't yet have the 2020 census results in it, but that'll be updated in the near future. As you can see, we are a very diverse region. It's quite nice, and getting more diverse as we go. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we turn to educational attainment and we're looking specifically by race and ethnicity, we can see the disparity and amongst different groups in our communities. And this is actually an interesting indicator. You might notice that we don't have all of the separately called out census races categories. And that has to do with small sample sizes. And that's one of those impacts that we have when using public data or Census American Community Survey data or ACS data. Even though we are a larger region, we still don't necessarily have enough samples of people to get a really good look at things. Educational attainment is one of the indicators that is tracked by a multitude of different groups trying to identify change over time. So let's see, we'll go ahead and jump to the next slide. Median annual household income, again by race and ethnicity. At the time that we pulled this data, it was the 2018 5-year ACS data sample. And this actually, oh, I'm so sorry, I lost track of my notes. So at any rate, we know that educational attainment and other kinds of metrics like that lead to household income needs and household income. So sorry, totally lost that. Okay. At any rate, there is more information in the report on this indicator and more. Next slide. When we look at economic prosperity, we did this a little bit differently than we had in past regional progress reports. And in this case, we compared the Sacramento region to other mid-sized peer regions across the United States. We did a report with Brookings in 2017 that many of you might be aware of. GSEC, Valley Vision, Sac Metro Chamber were all involved in that. And they had identified a number of other metropolitan areas that were similar in to the SACOG region. And so go ahead and jump to the next slide. So there are several indicators that sort of group all of those other regions together and then compare us to sort of the average, both the US and then the peer mid-sized regions. And we've got this broken out by, pre-recession, recession, and that's the 08 to 11 recession and the post-recession. Obviously, there's not good information here on anything from the pandemic years, but we will have more coming as time goes on. Then the next one, this is total jobs in the Sacramento region, again for 6 counties. And it shows that dip that happened in early 2020 as a result of the pandemic shutdown and some of the jobs that have come back. And so we know that it had a pronounced near-term effect. And now we know that there's post-pandemic data access. Yes, it is going to continue to be a challenge for a bunch of different reasons. Thanks, Evan. let's see. Okay, so that was really just a couple of metrics. But if you take a look at the PDF version of the report, it goes into greater detail in a lot of these different areas. Yeah, okay. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's for the great presentation, just kind of really valuable as we're looking at kind of where a region is starting from as we start this process. Norma, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yes, on the slide that you had the education by ethnic. Yes, go one more. Yes, did you guys do any kind of analysis about technical training? Or does that fall under some college, or where does that fall in?
That would generally, right, that would generally fall under some college.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yeah, with the census data that we have available, it doesn't break things down into those smaller categories.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you so very much.
Sure.
Thanks, Norma. Thanks, Tina. Any other questions? Alrighty, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron Wilshere. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks, Isa. And I can tell already we're gonna have quite a lot of fun as researchers, kind of talking shop and addressing your questions, as well as kind of how this is all coming together. How can data and research best support and illustrate the concerns and questions that are coming up. So just a quick note on the Centers of Excellence that I work for, which is a statewide organization operating at the regional level on behalf of the community college system. We're funded by the Chancellor's Office of Economic and Workforce Development Division. We're organized into regions that correspond to the way that the community colleges invest in career technical education. And so I'm working with a 22 county region technically that covers 15 colleges in the Sacramento area and the northern part of the state. Tina talked a little bit about her service territory, typically 6 counties. We often work with a 7-county region that does include Nevada County. I mostly work in the greater Sacramento area, and really our goal is to provide labor market information and other research support, both for the community colleges and other key community partners. We do a lot of work with Valley Vision around different initiative areas. We've worked on the SEDS in the past, both iterations, the previous one and the current prosperity strategy. And so I can share, I think in the spirit of asset inventorying and contributing here at the beginning to all the kind of materials we're going to collect to try to figure out the best way forward. I mean, these are just a few examples. I think that's what we're up to, is just sharing materials that are going to contribute to the overall process. So the first item I wanted to share on the next slide relates to our strategic plan for our regional consortium of colleges that I just mentioned. It's the name of the region is the North Far North. The North is the greater Sacramento region. And this is our annual strategic plan that accompanies what's called Strong Workforce Program investment dollars coming through the Chancellor's Office. This is kind of our major initiative area that funds a lot of special programs and enhancements for career education programs through the community colleges. And, we collect data on 11 priority sectors. And this data that's included in this report, you have the link there if you'd like to take a look at it. There's a kind of an interactive product there that you can scan on the web. There's some downloadable materials as well. But we provide, data on greater Sacramento and the far north region, industry information, employment, projected growth, top occupations. We're often thinking of things in terms of what we call middle skill jobs, which are these sorts of jobs and careers that require less than a bachelor's degree, but more than a high school diploma, including considerations around experience and other credentials, apprenticeship. And we also collect a lot of data on students. So how are students moving through in these different priority industry areas, and are they attaining jobs, and what do their wages look like once they complete? So we have different data sources that support all those different things. And here again, this is a product that's intended to inform investments to grow or shrink different programs as it may pertain to the priorities that the local colleges might have, and other community partners, often working with industry partners as well. Next slide, please. So we, in the context of the pandemic, we started putting out data. Initially, it was like on a weekly basis. The great pause, everything shut down, and we were kind of trying to figure out how we were going to support things as things kind of came to a stop. And what was immediately apparent was we needed real-time data. So information that was going to inform our colleges and our partners about what was happening in the economy on a real-time basis. We're now doing this quarterly. We've polished it up. We've got kind of a standard reporting template that we use. This report includes monthly industry data, jobs postings information. That's that bottom line chart there, looking at jobs postings volumes on a quarterly basis by industry to see, yes, they're going up. Yes, people are still hiring. And detailed jobs postings as well by industry that help the colleges and other employer liaisons on how what sorts of jobs, top employers, top job titles, skills, things of that nature. It's a tool called Burning Glass that we use. I'd encourage you to sign up for our newsletter there. I think, does that link work, or I could paste it into the chat? The reason I mentioned that is because we have our next economic update coming out on Thursday. So Evan, thanks for pasting that in, and you can see, if you sign up, you can see our economic update coming out on Thursday, and we're real proud of that product. Next slide, please. So, this is just kind of a real sample of the range of different things that we put out. We conduct simple kind of occupational scans to support program development. We provide sort of detailed occupational profiles. My colleague Ebony Benzing put out with Valley Vision a future of work study a couple of years ago. So all these things would be informing this process. One of the things, this is the last thing I'll talk about here, but one of the things that we do from time to time is support local planning entities with environmental scanning. We've done this for the city of Davis. I recently completed a report for the Placer County Office of Economic Development with Sierra College. And, back to this issue of building capacity and supporting our rural community partners. We did a report with Nevada County's Economic Resource Council and the satellite campus of Nevada County up there in Nevada City, Grass Valley, and did a profile for them that looked across the economy and found 8 key priority sectors and looked at corresponding occupations, programs at the college, at the local campus that were addressing these particular sectors. And, this kind of reporting resulted in expansion of their healthcare programs and, helped them to focus in on what key occupations and jobs they were going to focus on. for their local campus community. Again, information on, student throughput, awards earned, and how occupations are aligning with these, key industries in their economy. So with that, I hope that provides a little information about what we do and some of the materials that we're going to be supporting the CERF process with. So with that, Isa, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. I'll pause very briefly. Any questions for Aaron before we move on? Go ahead, Norma.
Aaron, I was wondering, do you also work with other specific industry sectors analysis? The reason I'm asking is that there is an analysis that was done specifically to the forest sector, and it came out in November 2021. Do you guys coordinate with those kinds of specific studies to see what the needs are within those particular sectors that are probably industry sectors for the region?
Yeah, Norma, thanks for your question. And I'll try to answer best I can. The effort I'm mentioning may or may not be what you're referring to. We could maybe connect offline, but my colleague in the far north, Sarah Phillips, has been working with what used to be called the Forest Management Task Force. It has a different name now across the state, but there is a workforce development committee that's supporting that statewide effort. And there's been research that's been conducted alongside that here locally. And so there may or may not be a report that coming from our office that you're referring to, but we have been supporting that effort. Here locally in the recent past, we worked with Valley Vision on an employer advisory panel for forest management. And then also at Lake Tahoe Community College, where they're establishing a forester program as part of a big public safety training program. We also attended and presented at a summit that they held there about 6 weeks ago. So it may be one of those, Norma, we could follow up after. I could put my email in the chat, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about that. But the answer is yes. We're kind of, as these kind of compelling emerging areas are coming up, we're following along and supporting community partners as they need research.
Yeah, it's the North State Planning and Development Collective. It's a forest sector workforce study report, and it was published in fall of 2021. And I think the Center for Economic Development out of Chico State was one of the primary partners putting that together.
Yeah.
So I guess this is it's more of a general question, and maybe I'm putting this up ahead of what we're trying to do here, and maybe it's more appropriate at another time, but I want to ask it now. So am I to understand that as part of this process, even though we are right now just doing for the 5 million, but once we get the 5 million, one of the things that we're going to be doing is identifying the growing industry clusters and then establishing a strategy in terms of how are we going to respond in terms of development of workforce in those sectors? Is that going to be eventually what's going to come out of once we get the $5 million?
I could jump in, Norma. Yeah, that's definitely a piece of it. I mean, I think it is looking at where's our market opportunity within our sectors and how do we understand that opportunity and create pathways into it. When Isa shared, a slide earlier on that had a bunch of different types of analyses that the CERF program is saying, is part of this program that you have to produce. A cluster analysis is one of those. And so the type of analysis that Aaron was presenting will be an important part of how we think about priority sectors. And Isa's about to present on the prosperity strategy. And that's for a 6-county region, but across our whole 8-county region, this is not there's a lot of work that's already been done on this. So what Erin's presented is a great overview and example of some of these cluster analyses. We're going to talk about how things were prioritized kind of right as the pandemic was coming on. So I think, you know, part of the research goals are, you know, looking at the economic shocks that we have, thinking about recovery, thinking more about equity-centered economic growth, getting a lot more operational about that, and then also thinking about the sustainability side. So how is it that we're supporting a transition to a low carbon economy? But this kind of foundational economic data is certainly an important piece.
Thank you so very much.
Thanks, Norma. Thanks, Erin and Evan as well. All right, so with that, we are going to move on to kind of one final regional asset that we want to touch on briefly, as Evan noted, is our regional prosperity strategy. Next slide, please. So the prosperity strategy is the comprehensive economic development strategy for the 6-county region. So that includes El Dorado, Placer, Sacramento, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba counties. I want to note that in our CERF designated Sacramento region, there are other comprehensive economic development strategies or similar economic development plans that exist for other regions. For example, the Yuba Sutter Economic Development District also has their own EDA approved comprehensive economic development strategy. The Tahoe Basin region also just completed their Envision Tahoe process, which is an economic development strategy for that region. So this is kind of one of, in addition to that, one of them is the prosperity strategy, which is for that 6-county region. And the prosperity strategy, you know, it was a 2-year process that was founded on, you know, extensive research. You know, for instance, a lot of the work that Erin was speaking to, that the Center of Excellence does, fed into this, fed into our into this and our previous SEDS as well. There were also, you know, multiple public convenings, hundreds of interviews. So a lot went into kind of shaping the priorities that were identified in this prosperity strategy. And really at the height of, at the core of the prosperity strategy, we have kind of 6 core strategies that drive, 6 core strategies that guide the economic development work in our region. 3 of those strategies are sector-based strategies, and that includes, as you're seeing bulleted here, food, ag, and health innovation, life sciences, and future mobility. And then it also includes 3 strategies that prioritize critical supporting components to be able to advance those sector strategies. So that includes infrastructure, workforce, and creating a more business-friendly environment, or creating a business-friendly environment. As part of this prosperity strategy, and why we're kind of talking about it today, the prosperity strategy calls out several metrics, which you'll see in the succeeding slides, that are meant to be monitored on an annual basis, that are meant to help assess kind of overall progress towards prosperity strategy goals and kind of the overall trajectory of the prosperity strategy and recovery. This is in addition to also kind of project or strategy specific outcomes that are called out in the document as well. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So I won't list all of these, but just to kind of show, you know, these are some of the indicators that we are tracking as part of the prosperity strategy. I didn't include them here. We'll put a link in the chat to the full prosperity strategy that also includes like what is the, you know, source for each of these indicators. You know, for example, some of it is Census Bureau data, census data rather. Some of it is data from institutions, for example, like Brookings or other similar institutions. So the first kind of group is regional inclusive economic indicators. So that would include, you know, median household income, cost of living, wage gain over time by sector, skill level, and education, for example. The second kind of big bucket of indicators are innovation and business growth indicators. So that would include the Business Employment Dynamics Index, the Innovation Index, venture capital funding, investment in business. And again, I'll note each of these indicators come from a sort of particular identified source. So these are kind of data points that we know exist out there that we're kind of tracking as part of the prosperity strategy. Next slide, please. Workforce indicators as well. So labor market equity by census tract, gender and race, number of degrees and awards in emerging industries, projected skills gap and labor shortages. And then the fourth kind of bucket, transportation infrastructure indicators, such as, for example, things like public transit wait times, roadway reliability, annual home price, average rent per unit, among some others as well. So that kind of wraps up the first half of this workshop. As we said, we're going to go to a break in a little bit. Appreciate you all kind of participating in this first half, and hopefully this was valuable. Before we kind of move into that break and kind of tee up the second half of this workshop, want to pause in case anyone has any initial kind of clarifying questions or thoughts that they want to share. And then of course, at the second half, we're going to separate into breakout rooms for people to kind of really dive in and share their input.
Matt Miller, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're adding some things to the chat, and I know you've given a lot of thought to these different, especially on the prosperity strategy metrics and thinking about things like living wage. Anything you would want to give a little more detail on? Oh, and you're on mute.
Sorry, never get that right. In terms of understanding sort of wage and relative prosperity and the quality of growth, I think what we've looked at from the University of Washington School of Social Work as well as MIT are what UW calls self-sufficiency standards. So controlling by more local estimates of costs, cost of living, rents, et cetera, and also controlling for family composition size. And MIT tries to do something similar. So those could be ways to benchmark, say, quality income generation or quality wage growth within the region. Just an idea.
Thanks, Matt.
Megan, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. Me being just sort of new to some of the indicators, it definitely, from a creative economy perspective, I definitely, kind of want to understand a little bit more. There's a lot of different plans here. And so I'm thinking like a lot from my health work. I'm like, I want the meta-analysis here on like all of these different plans and the through lines that are there so we can kind of figure out how we best intersect with some of that. But one thing that is just an observation, often when we see a lot of these, sector specific strategies, there are intersections to a number of these things. And I think it's useful for us to think about what those look like. And I'll give an example here. When you look at something like advanced manufacturing, there was a really great study that was done by the National Endowment for the Arts and their design division, and it really focused on, industrial design and manufacturing competitiveness as an example. And so there's a bit that's often lost when we sort of like go deep on something. I've really found like what makes a place unique is the relative composition of all of these different things. And when you start to combine those particular assets, like what can you do that maybe nobody else can do because that unique set of assets that exists in that particular community. And so that's just one observation I would have as we think about moving forward is what are the intersectional parts of this and how that might allow for or open up engagement by an array of other players who might not necessarily easily fit within that. I mean, even, there's like probably a decade of work of ArtPlace specifically, and I'm using my own examples because they're the easiest and most concrete to share, but when you look about things like social determinants of health, a lot of work done on the role of arts in public health in those kinds of spaces. So I think it probably behooves us to kind of think about how we could best integrate some of that into the work that's already been done, not replace, but just build off of those strategies and kind of look at the alignment there.
Lost my mute button. Thank you, Megan. Really, really excellent points. I see some hands. Gary? Gary, can you hear us? I think you might be on mute if you're talking.
When I think about resilience, I think about, where are the problem areas and what opportunities do we have to redirect a problem into an opportunity? But for example, what work has been done on where are going to be the job losses? What are the disadvantaged industries we need to transition people out of? What are the industries that we need to prepare them to go into? And if we're talking about the transition to a carbon neutral economy, it intersects with the whole climate change problem. And there's going to be problems in drought and fire and what do we need to kind of have a rapid reaction capability in the community to deal with people that are affected by that. And I know this is like a third rail issue, but I really worry about in this kind of transition, the impact on homelessness. That a lot of people will just be lost as to what to do. And we already see a lot of that around, and it's a really tough problem. But in terms of resilience in a community, so many things are undermined by an increasing category of people that are displaced from homes and jobs and are homeless. So take it as a comment now, but it just seems like it's related to what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary, for elevating that. I thought I saw one more hand. Shira?
Yes, hi. I do apologize if it's loud. I'm driving. So I just wanted to talk about a few concepts that I think are really important to bring in here. Is one, the big make and place movement. I think, connecting that to circular economy. There's a lot of talk about circular economy, but the talk currently right now about circular economy is a very top-down approach. And I would like to kind of open more the conversation to a bottom-up approach to circular economy. And that is utilizing the skill sets that we have within a community, finding out what those are and connecting that with waste diversion. So we could be finding out what we could be diverting from landfill, converting those into useful products, and kind of like building businesses, building jobs within a make community. So that way we're looking at how can our community here support our own community and then eventually export those products elsewhere, kind of bringing in dollars to the region. But these are some of the things kind of like, I wish, and if I had a magic wand, that we had some kind of reuse facility that we started to organize and collect and giving people the creativity to figure out what they could do, what uses that could do, and how that could help. And really just talking to community, because the community really understands their own unique problem, neighborhood by neighborhood. So just a few concepts and ideas I just wanted to put out there. And thank you for having this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Shira, for sharing those thoughts. Carrie?
So I wanted to just ask about the evaluation piece, right? And if there is some, and I will be honest, I haven't read the whole CERF guidance. If there is some understanding from the state, right, about how the program, the project will be evaluated at a central level, I'm thinking about, some of the indicators that were talked about and how do you balance how long it takes for data for those indicators to change, right? Some indicators you might be able to see change in data more quickly, but some of these indicators are going to take years or longer to really see a lot of change. And so how do you have a balance as you're evaluating projects of indicators that you can measure progress in a more timely manner and try and link that in some way to the project that's going on, and those indicators that you're really trying to look at more long term and see that change over time that's going to be much slower.
Thank you, Carrie. And yeah, great question. And I can kind of chime in with an answer from just the perspective of what the state's guidelines have put out so far, and then I'll let Evan chime in as well if she has anything to add. So in terms of evaluation, the state has sort of said, generally speaking, like to be determined. So they have said in the guidelines that, you know, as we're working on putting in an application for the planning phase, once we're in the planning phase and as we move closer to the implementation phase, they will be releasing kind of specific guidance, specific tools, and there will be folks on the state SERF team who will kind of be tasked with that evaluation process, who will be working closely with the regional conveners in the different regions. So the way that the SERF guidelines for the planning phase, at least now, are kind of framing or positioning the data research work is around kind of how that can help inform the priorities that you want to advance. And then they will they're sort of saying like, you know, we will let you know later down the road whether the tools you can use to actually make sure that the projects you're advancing when they get implemented are yielding the results that we hope for the region. So that's sort of what that is now.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is I think that's a, you know, that's always a challenging issue when you're doing long-term economic initiatives and trying to tag them to things like job creation or decreasing economic disparities across communities and populations. And I think we're gonna, you know, for one thing, I think for our project, it's gonna be really important to prioritize a set of metrics that are important to us because it will steer the way that we prioritize projects that we want to advance in the implementation phase and kind of how we think about this opportunity for our region. And so I think that piece is really important. And then, you know, the second piece is that measurable from a performance perspective within the time frame that is offered for the grant. And that's, you know, frankly, I think that's just a challenge. And there's going to have to be a way that both the state will support us and our region will come to terms with some milestones and with some thoughts about how the work we're doing interacts with these big metrics that take a long time to move, or even if they're moving, take a long time to get reported into public sources of information. So I think, you know, it's important that we understand from a metrics perspective what kind of changes we're trying to create in the community, and then do our best to have a really ground truth set of processes to understand how, you know, how that resonates within communities and how that might impact communities. So I think as we're right now talking about all these quantitative measures and metrics, I think that's really important. But as we, in this group, but in the community engagement group as well, you know, think about how are we bringing community members into the process? How are we kind of understanding the lived experience and making sure that's designed into the project as well? So that would be kind of my imperfect answer for how we think about those things.
Thanks, Evan. Okay, with that, as we said at the front end, we're going to give folks a 5-minute break to just step away from the screen if they'd like to kind of digest everything that's been discussed so far. Really appreciate everyone's engagement. This is already turning into such a fantastic discussion, and we're hoping to continue that in the second half of this when we'll be doing the breakout room discussion piece. And as we're stepping away for the next 5 minutes, we're going to leave up here on the screen share the discussion questions that we'll be going through in the breakout rooms, just in case folks find it helpful to kind of take a quick look and think about them a little bit before we move in. So we will see folks back here at, let's say 2:30 for folks to start hopping back on, and see you all in a little bit. All right, everybody, I think it has been close to 5 minutes. I'm going to give folks a minute or so to come back and get situated back at their laptop. Hope everyone had a chance to grab a drink of water, take a deep breath, answer an email maybe if you're having that kind of week. All right. I know we have some folks who may be off camera due to some maybe connectivity issues. Can I get a quick hands up, thumbs up, any sort of use of Zoom emojis or whatnot, just to get a sense of how many folks we've got back on the call, make sure most of the group is back before I move forward. Yes, seeing many thumbs up, seeing folks back on camera. Seeing heart and trumpet emojis, fantastic. All right, welcome back everyone, and thanks for returning for the second half of the workshop. I'm going to pass it to Evan to kind of key us up for the next portion.
Yeah, thanks, Isa, and thanks everyone. We were just warming up into a great conversation, and so during the break, our team pulled a little bit of an audible. We had thought that we'd do breakout sessions. And as part of those breakout sessions, we also have a variety of different ways to contribute ideas. We have a Jamboard, which is a way of kind of writing something down and putting it on a virtual sticky note. We're going to orient to that in just a minute. Of course, we have our chat. But I think that the change that we're going to make is we're seeing such value in sharing ideas across this bigger group that I think we're not going to go to breakouts. We're going to instead stay as this big group, and we're going to work through these questions using these different mechanisms, because I know that different people have different ways that work well of contributing ideas. So I hope that is agreeable for people, but we've already, I think, benefited from the ideas that people have been sharing and the resources that people have been sharing, and we want to just maximize the opportunity for everyone to gain the benefit of each other's ideas and thoughts. So with that, we're going to get into our discussion questions. And I'm going to hand it back over to Isa or maybe Alana to talk about how to use Jamboard and how we're going to tackle this next part.
Thanks, Evan. Alana, if we could maybe take it off screen share so that I can screen share the Jamboard, and maybe we can start kind of putting those questions in the chat as well, so folks can kind of reference them throughout. And then I will go ahead and pull up a Jamboard for us to walk us through this tool. Okay, hopefully you're all able to see that. Can I get a thumbs up if folks are looking at a Jamboard right now? Great. Want to make sure with the hundreds of tabs we've got spread out on this desktop here. So okay, so I know some folks are familiar with this platform, but for those who are not or seeing this or using this for the first time, I'll just walk through this really briefly. So this is a Jamboard. I like to think of it as kind of a virtual whiteboard almost. So up here where you're seeing, hopefully you're seeing my arrow hover on the upper center of this, you see that we have kind of different slides or whiteboards to go through. Each one corresponds to a particular discussion question. So each discussion question has kind of its own whiteboard, and you can navigate back and forth between them at any time by hitting the arrows on the left side, right side to go through them. The way this works is if you'd like to provide input for anyone or answer any one of these questions, if you go here to the left-hand side, there are a number of different tools you can use to kind of type out answers. I think the easiest, most functional one is the sticky note. So this like square right here. So if you click that square, something like this will pop up and you can type out whatever response you have. So for example, I think I'm on the research needs of our region slide. So let's say understanding the scope of the economy, or whatever feedback you might have. Type it into the sticky note and then pick a color, hit save, and then to exit out of this, just hit cancel, and you'll see that your sticky note has kind of appeared on this page, and you can click on it and kind of drag it wherever you want to move it around. Our team, Valley Vision staff, will kind of help by trying to kind of keep things organized so we're able to see all the sticky notes. So this is one way to respond to the different questions. Alternatively, of course, also welcome folks just unmuting and jumping in verbally. We also use this as a note-taking tool, so you'll see if you'd prefer to chime in the chat or verbally, go ahead and do that, and Valley Vision staff will move it into the sticky notes. Any questions about use of the Jamboard tool? All right. Great. So I think I might actually keep screen share up. Does that sound good, Evan? So folks can see as we're populating this. And then the link to the Jamboard was posted by Ilana in the chat, so you should be able to see that as well. If you click onto that, it will take you right to this Jamboard. Thank you, Ilana, for putting the questions in there.
Do we want to go through the questions a little bit as well?
Yeah, so I'll go over to this first slide, which kind of lists all the different questions that we can see. And as I said, each slide after that holds one question. So I'll go through this briefly, and then we'll tackle the questions maybe one by one. So the first one, which is going to be found in the second slide, are there additional research and data assets that you'd like to elevate? So we provided a few examples in the first half of this workshop, but want to create space for folks to kind of share other assets that they're aware of or working on. I know some of that was already happening in the chat, so thanks for everyone who's been doing that. We'll make sure that's saved and included as we move forward. The second question is, what are some of our region's research needs that could help advance the CERF's purpose? So for example, things like getting a fuller understanding of the scope of when people talk about the clean economy, what exactly does that include? You know, or for example, getting a definition around what does a clean job mean, or I'm sorry, what does a green job mean? You know, what does that entail? What are the characteristics of that? The third question is closely related to the second question. What are some of the activities that could support these needs that we've identified, and who are the organizations or institutions who can help or who could help lead this effort? And then finally, the last question, could we use this opportunity to build more local capacity for data and research needs? And if the answer is yes, what would that look like? So again, this was something that was alluded to in the first half of the workshop. We're a very kind of wide geographic region, many different communities involved. So I want to make sure that we're tackling that specific topic as well. Okay, so I'm seeing some folks are starting to populate some things in the Jamboard. Thank you for that. And maybe I'll go ahead and, Evan, what do you think? Should we go kind of question by question maybe, and then work through all four? Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. And I think, you know, it looks like people are already starting to navigate this. So we could also maybe give like 3 minutes of quiet time or so to absorb the questions and kind of navigate around on the Jamboard. I know that the virtual environment can be an awkward place for silence in a way that's different from if we were actually in the room together, but we'll just go ahead and try it anyway and give people a chance just to kind of absorb and read and start to put your ideas in. And again, you know, you could put them in chat, you could put them in the Jamboard, but just start thinking about these questions, and then we'll open it up and go question by question and continue adding things.
Thanks, Evan. And if anyone has questions about the platform, any issues, feel free to put that in the chat and we'll help you out.
I am currently driving, so I can't type. Would I be able to add in mine later once I get to my destination?
Yes, so we will keep this open, I would say at least the next 24 hours. So yes, you would be able to do that. And also if there's anything you want to just kind of unmute and chime in, feel free to do that. We can put it in the Jamboard for you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, are we ready to come back and go question by question and discuss what's in here? If you've had enough time, then or if you need more time, how about that? Then raise your hand, and otherwise we could start going through it. Okay. Okay. Well, we could start with the first question here. Are there additional research and data assets that you'd like to elevate? And I'll start reading through these, and then if we have questions or if you want to say more, then we can call on others to do that. So understanding the full capability of CalJobs as a foundation for a statewide CRM, training, employment, and asset database. Excellent. Anyone want to say anything more about that?
This is Mike. Yeah, so we've been leveraging CalJobs for our grant projects so far, and it's actually got a lot of capabilities, just not very user-friendly as far as the graphic interface. But the underlying data set that's embedded in there with information on employers, job descriptions, candidates with their resumes, training providers, all the curriculum, the lesson plans. I mean, it's got a lot of stuff there that is very underutilized because of the usability of the platform, I think. So it's just something to consider.
Excellent, thank you. That sounds like that is a great resource. Okay, and I'm going to move on, but chime in, raise your hand if there's more, and then keep adding. If things are still coming to mind, then please keep adding cards to this. So I see a cluster here oriented towards the creative economy. So more fully unpacking the creative economy, creative occupations versus creative industries, industry and occupation competitiveness and trajectory, disaggregate by race, and City of Sacramento has access to maybe some of this creative economy data. There's Artlook, unifies school-based and community-based information arts programs in schools in Sacramento. And some more details about that. We could unpack that further. The nonprofits arts sector impacts and health metrics, pre and post pandemic. City of Sacramento subscribes to data arts, cultural data projects. That's great to know those resources exist. And then I think that this creative economy samples and links copied from the chat from earlier. Anything to add on this cluster of creative economy comments?
Shira, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So I think I'm more of like the intersection between creative economy and sustainability. And I would love to see data sets on waste diversion. So a lot of cities have waste diversion requirements and how that can be kind of cross-referenced with job creation. Because if I know this is kind of off and weird and crazy, but if there's a way to kind of make that connection between waste diversion and how much is diverted from the landfill and jobs that can be created from that, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Excellent. We're getting that card up there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, because like cities are required to divert a certain amount, and it's going to increase. And if there's a way to kind of make that connection, that would be amazing.
Okay, that was that was on the creative economy, but looking at kind of some intersectional issues. Anything else on the creative economy side that we'd want to add or comment on? Okay, and then next to that we have, I think this is pasted from chat, that the United Way of California has developed the California Real Cost Measure. Unlike the official poverty measure, which primarily accounts for the cost of food. Oh, maybe this didn't get all of it in there, but the real cost measure factors the costs of other things as well. So that's good. Just wanted to make sure that chat comment got in here as well. But Carmen or anyone else, anything else to add about this one? Okay, I'm going to keep rolling on then, but jump in if you'd like. Local state ordinance bills that will affect the demand for job growth in the sustainable sectors. So the REACH code for developers, construction, and manufacturing. So looking at how the policies around REACH codes, or I think kind of more clean construction, will impact job growth. Is that right?
Yeah, that was me, Nate Bolsh. I'm actually based out of the Bay, but do work in Sacramento, and that's one of the things that we're looking at out here. But yeah, construction and anything related to sustainability and the jobs to housing ratio as well that comes with that. So ensuring that we're keeping up with pay as well. So yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, and the 2022 Climate Investments Annual Report is live for viewing. It would be worthwhile to refer to the data dashboard for our SERF effort. That's great. That's a great resource. I'm just pausing so that people can jump in. If not, I'll just keep rolling, but interrupt me if you'd like. Could compare the income with is that the United Way the UW self-sufficiency wages, or the MIT? Oh, this was Matt Miller's comment.
Yeah, that's
in the chat.
Yeah, I'm sort of riffing off another comment about how we sort of talk about accounting for cost of living differences, et cetera. Sorry, my dog's in the background. But that's University of Washington, Seattle School Association.
Got it. Excellent. And there's a lot of emerging software and data tools that address both equity and job quality or the high road jobs. It would be worth assessing various tools to see where value adds are. And if anybody has a sense of what those tools are, I know that we've looked at a few things that might be beneficial to the region, but would be really interested to hear if people have ideas or thoughts about good tools, good data analysis tools that you've seen. Okay, and I think the last one I see here, oh, I've got Shira, I think your hand might still be up from before, or did you have something new? Oh, okay, it was up from before. And then I do see a hand from Norma.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time with the sticky notes and everything, but I wanted to add something to this, and that is, it'd be great to get some, and I think it might be in some of the reports that you referenced in the earlier part of the presentation, is trending data on industry clusters within our region.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for anybody else who's not able to use the Jamboards, then please call out, and we're adding things as you talk. Shira?
Yeah, I don't know how this is completely, if this is off topic, I apologize, but it just popped in my head. Like, one thing I feel like if we're talking about the homeless population and kind of like economic development and kind of that cross reference between those two, one thing that we don't have in the region is understanding where we have certain locations to send people, or mental health institutions. So if we're looking at neighborhoods or places, or kind of like understanding, okay, where is like a mental health place that people can go? Where is there and I don't know if those are data sets that are available. I've been trying to get those from Downtown Partnership, and we've been trying to kind of compile those. So, and maybe that's completely off topic here, but just kind of popped up.
No, I think this is a brainstorm for sure. So it's great to surface. As to whether it speaks to kind of the heart of the program, I'm not sure. There's a public health component, and if we're thinking about, addressing economic disparities, there could be a place where we're thinking about these types of issues. Absolutely. Okay, then I think the last card I haven't read is the Cal-Ed Economic Recovery and Resiliency Playbook. It's going to be released broadly soon. That's great to know, with good tools and touchstones, and I don't doubt it. It's a good resource. Okay, we've got some great resources up here. I do think that as we get into the planning phase, doing that asset inventory of the resources we already have will be really important. And then, finding kind of a way of connecting the dots where we need to, I think is an important exercise before looking to do new analyses and things like that. So this is great to really surface where some of these data sources are. So I'm going to go to the next slide and question 2. What are some of the region's research needs that could help advance the CERF's purpose? And I'm going to kind of do the same thing and just start going through the cards. And if you have something you want to add or ask or describe more, then just jump right in. So first was Isa's example, understanding the scope of the clean economy. And I do think that is important. And I see this other connecting climate goals and challenges to economic goals. So I think that meaningful connection between where we have economic opportunity and where we have both needs and challenges and mandates around the climate are really important. What are examples of jobs that are disappearing in the transition to green jobs, conventional vehicle repair, low value, high water requirement crop production? So yeah, so what jobs are getting kind of either regulated out or by best practices are getting phased out, and then what's replacing them? I think it's a great question. From a rural region, what agricultural supports are needed to keep ag land as ag land? So farmer support, technology, etc. Great question. And again, please jump in if you want to dive into any of these more. Since there is a climate component to this funding mechanism, it would be good to figure out how we can measure the overall GHG reduction, etc., impacts of planned projects, including the ones that aren't directly green. Interesting. Anybody want to say more about that one?
That was me. This is a Chini. It's a very jaggedy way of saying that there are very clear ways of measuring like greenhouse gas reductions for, directly climate projects like solar installations or cool roofs or things like that. But there are other projects such as for example, like direct farming education or just environmental education that doesn't have a way of measuring long-term environmental impacts for the region. And as a data and evaluations group, it would be that I just feel like that would be a neat thing to report on. But there aren't, at least from a statewide perspective, there aren't necessarily ways of measuring the environmental impact of projects that doesn't have a calculable GHG reduction. Yeah, so very jaggedy, but just something to think through if we have the expertise within the group.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And then you really, this is a mechanism to look at those, to look at how we think about climate and low carbon in the economy. So I think that's a great example of a really concrete way of being able to do that. Okay, isolating discrete tasks or skills that are used between multiple roles that make the connection between a green job and a non-green job. Anybody want to say more about that one?
Yeah, this is Mike. Seems to be some looking at it from my perspective in manufacturing and making hardware products. Somebody that maybe welds a pipe fitting versus welding a battery containment device. The skill sets are the same, can be trained for roles that are available today, but those aren't considered green jobs, right? As from what I'm seeing. So just more understanding in that regard.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mike. And I think that, when we think about our high growth sectors that have been identified, I think it's important to know that the green jobs cut across sectors. It's not like it's all just resides within any particular sectors. So it's a it's a different lens. And so if we were only looking at from a sector perspective, we would be missing the opportunity to think about transferable skills and the way different skills might function in a variety of different.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, great. Okay, a refresh of the Brookings analysis or something similar. Yeah, that's a great thought. And we've had some opening conversations with Brookings to think about what's possible, what they might potentially bring. So I think that's something we'll definitely want to consider. Qualitative feedback accompanying quantitative data that gets to the earlier points made. Yeah. So what does this information tell us? What we're unique in, where growth can occur, as well as engagement of, I think I just have to make it bigger. Oh, no, maybe not. Anybody want to say more about this?
Evan, that was mine. And I think it was partly just building off some of the earlier comments that were made around forest management and reporting there. I mean, this is just basic stuff I think that we're going to do, which is, sort of culling the feedback as we're doing now to the data components in ways that yields priority areas for investment. It starts to look like more like, project, teeing up project proposals or like frameworks within the projects can fit into. Because I think a lot of the reaction that stakeholders are going to have to the data is probably really going to be really rich process.
Yeah, great. So that mechanism to do some ground truthing. Okay, better understanding the current conditions, including the needs as a result of the pandemic, et cetera. So thinking about bridging maybe existing resources or existing assets that we have in a way that allows us to understand conditions now. And maybe part of that is a qualitative approach to research. And then with respect from, this was Shira's comment from earlier with respect to homelessness, understanding where we can send people for mental health facilities or other resources. And then we need to look at trending data on industry clusters within our region, keep tracking key environmental related benchmarks by sector as the region makes progress to a more sustainable future. Do you want to say more about that one?
Sorry, I was trying to mute myself. Yeah, in general, right, as the different sectors in the region are going to make progress in one way or another, it will be good eventually to see a sum up of those benefits that the region is seeing. Individually may not be significant, like small progress here, small progress there, but in aggregate, it will see how the region, so something that I don't think we have. It will be interesting to see how that, as we make progress through 2030, 2040, 2050, those years, that will be a good legacy to see how we make progress by sector.
Great. Yeah, thank you. That would be really valuable. And then we'll probably need to address the definitions and frameworks that yield meaning to the metrics. Much of this work has been done. These are new emphases in CERF on economic equity, good jobs, et cetera, some literature review. So some kind of contextualizing of some of the major metrics. Anybody want to note anything else about that?
I think that was mine. I forget. I did want to say something about that though, is, I think one of the things that strikes me about this is the level of complexity, and the extent to which it's possible to distill things down into sort of tangible takeaways, like as we're looking for frameworks that are touchstones or definitions that are touchstones around things like the high road or good jobs or equitable economy. There's ways in which it's super complicated and then it isn't, just to give one example, hitting a threshold for the median wage for your region can sometimes be used as a measure of economic equity. And, so things like that, or just reports where we're like, you know, hey, this is really current and kind of accepted. That'll of course change in real time as we go along. So I just kind of wanted to mention those pieces.
Great, thanks, Erin. And I see Tiffany, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So this may be tangential, but I want to lift it up because it's in relationship to the sticky tab and the need to do some, you know, I guess, level setting around definitions. And also speaking to the comment that someone made earlier about how do you evaluate work like this when we're talking about these big data sets, right? And these metrics that don't shift for long periods of time. And so one of the things that I want to lift up again, I'm feeling it, but it also kind of seems tangential to what people are talking about, is the need to have some evaluation that understands, you know, through this process, you know, how is the level setting happening? I mean, there's a lot of big terms here that people have different meaning to: just transition, resiliency, equity, you know, economic development, clusters. Like, it's all very wonky terminology. And especially if there's some kind of goal in the end to, you know, engage grassroots communities and involve them in this process, I think there's going to have to be some level setting around what do we mean by these, especially if we're going to operate as a region, and that's the goal, right, is to develop these regional strategies. I also think it would be helpful to have some data collection around the process, right, because work only can move at the speed of trust. So how is trust being built among the collaborative partners? You know, if you're trying to lift up regional strategies, right, like, how do people feel about the process that's being used to come to some decisions about those regional strategies? So as opposed to having all of these counties that are operating independently that are trying to just get a piece of the pie, right? That they're truly thinking in a regional framework, which I think would also need like researchers to lift up, like Erin was just talking about. Okay, so here's one piece of the strategy. Here's all these really complicated frameworks. Let me tell you what these frameworks say, and then as a group, what resonates with you, right? So researchers can be taking all of that, making meeting, doing some aggregate analysis, and like bringing it back to the group. But I do see a need to really have, you know, not only the research piece that's doing like the policy analyst, but also the evaluation piece that's just evaluating some of the key pieces that are needed for collaboratives to really function as collaboratives. And I think that sets this group up really well for implementation as well, right? Because you can lift up a model that I think is part of what they're trying to achieve, right? Here's a model for how people can work collaboratively on a 6-region scale, which is not easy, right? So if you have some evaluation tracking with you and helping you understand the meeting, the trust building, the processes that are being used to move this group along, I think you can get the data to transition how this is happening to be more effective. So again, it feels tangential, but I wanted to lift it up because that sticky tab was really instrumental for me to put all this together. So thank you.
Really appreciate those comments, Tiffany. And I think really important to think about just that, like, how are we using evaluation, not only to help people understand and to help guide our work, but also to continuously learn kind of from the beginning. So so thank you very much for that. I want to check in with Shira. Your hand's been up for a while. I think it might have been from the last round of comments, or do you have a new one?
I do have a new one.
Oh, okay.
One thing, thank you, sorry, I'm driving here. One thing I wanted to say, there is a thing where, and again, I don't know where this goes, but where creatives come into a dilapidated, that's not the word either, but you know, a rundown place, creatives will come in, elevate the space, make it more attractive, really elevating the value of property around them, and then eventually get kicked out. So this has happened in downtown Los Angeles. This has happened in a lot of places. What has been hard about this process, everybody knows that this is true. Everybody understands this process. Developers understand this process, but it hasn't been quantified into data, into spreadsheet data in a way that can be used to say, hey, you know, supporting the creative economy actually elevates value within property. I don't know if that goes here or anywhere, but I'm just putting it out there. Sorry, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that. And Erin.
I was just going to respond to the previous comment, which sort of brought up for me, you know, like, I wonder what creative approaches could be taken to, you know, really make this information understandable to sort of lay audiences and the public, or, you know, particularly like working with particular community-based organizations and their members and participants to share some of this information. I mean, like, you know, again, the extent to which it's useful and understandable to your lay audience, I think does sort of speak to your effectiveness, right? To an extent, like, is this it's that kind of adage, is this understandable when you tell members of your household, like, what you're working on, you know? And I think that does kind of translate into some measure of success in the project. The other thing I was just going to say really quickly is I think it'd be great. Like, a lot of this is, I'm guessing, going to really overlap with the other regions, the other SERF regions, and you know, like some way to kind of translate back to our stakeholders, like what they're learning, and those kind of capacity building things that we can do to help understand how we're all kind of learning together and developing similar understandings of issues.
Great, thank you, Erin. And Megan?
Yeah, I'm just going to piggyback off of Erin's comment, because I think it is relevant. It's one of the things, like, I mean, I've lived in a lot of this data for a long time. So I'm like, we got to disaggregate this by race, and we have to look at all of these, you know, location quotients, and where are we competitive, and all of this stuff. And at the same time, you're absolutely right. I think there is sometimes a way to really personalize this stuff, that the story piece of it is actually really where, and the narrative is really where the arts shine, because they, you know, they can engage in these kinds of conversations. Or, and I'll give an example actually to it, just to, I've done a lot of work on the arts and public health space, and arts and health and human services. And when we look back, when I was in Cleveland, in the healthcare system, which is the county hospital system, we were all really heavily dealing with the opiate epidemic, and really grappling with that, and really examining what that meant, and having stories and conversations with people who were, you know, doctors who were being measured, how one measure, a measure like pain, can actually and how a doctor is measured on those pain scores can fundamentally influence, like, these public health outcomes that we're actually seeing. You know, they ended up doing, they had actors who were, you know, eliciting that information from the doctors, and then essentially creating a story or a play that really unpacked that and allowed people to really engage with the data in a different kind of way. And I think, like, Erin, I'm just like, you bringing that up, for me just sort of resonates, like, right, those are the creative ways, even beyond just like visualizations and other kinds of things that help people understand and engage with information differently. So I just appreciate you calling that out, and thought I'd share a couple of examples.
Thanks, Megan. What a great and creative example to make you think about, health differently. Norma.
So I wanted to comment on the sticky that said, understanding the state of the region post-COVID. I think that is a very important thing to evaluate, because it isn't the same. Supply chains have been turned upside down. The whole thing that happened during COVID in terms of the healthcare industry and being able to respond to a pandemic, and the shortcomings that were uncovered as a result, even the distribution of information related to the pandemic was also had its own challenges. But the actual, when you start seeing sections of the supply chain being affected because the workforce was not there, because the workforce was impacted, you know, people just couldn't work because they had COVID, that is forcing us to look at those supply chains differently, so that we can sustain an economy through another catastrophic kind of event. So that's the whole thing, is to having these systems in place, or having some sort of flexibility or some sort of resiliency built into the supply chain, so that it's responsive to any kind of
any kind of changes or impacts, any kind of changes that might impact that supply chain in any kind of manner.
Great, thanks, Norma. Okay. And I think Valley Vision staff is capturing as we're having this conversation and adding, I think we've got a couple pages now for this. So making sure we're getting everybody's comments. I'm going to move on to our next question. This is really great discussion though. So our next question is, what are some of the activities that could support these needs, and who are the organizations or institutions who can help lead the effort? So I see include local chambers specific to groups such as Asian, Pacific, Black, and Hispanic. Excellent. And again, dive in if there's more information or details you want to add. Engage local and two comments like this: engage local and regional chambers for technical assistance in jobs, technical training opportunities with workforce development partners such as tech schools and community-based organizations such as the Community Resource Project. Direct engagement with employers to collect job descriptions for all positions, not just the ones they're actively trying to fill. Does somebody want to say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this is Mike again. So the idea here is twofold. One is working more in concert with the employers on their projected labor needs, so we can have more direct, forecasting on positions that need to get filled, instead of waiting for them to be posted publicly. Having that insider scoop. We have those relationships established with some employers we work with, and that seems to work out real nice. Kind of bypasses the searching and recruiting when we already have candidates of people that, or pools of people that would fill the roles appropriately. But this comment specifically, looking at the I guess how the organizations are structured from the management, the different departments, different divisions, admin, technical roles, and isolating or identifying training opportunities to fill those roles, or getting, I guess, a better understanding of the full spectrum of opportunities available in those type of positions, regardless if they're open, because eventually that position will need to be filled from retirement or from transition from the company. Just having more visibility on the total labor market, not just the open positions.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And I think that also speaks to the benefit of engaged employers and kind of the system set up in which there's information flow that's beneficial to everybody.
Right.
All right. Electric vehicles are already here and becoming a big part of the solution to reduce carbon produced by standard vehicles. The region needs to consider a holistic way to deliver new workforce at community colleges or trade tech schools to address demand of this more sophisticated technology while making progress on inequities on income or education by race and ethnicity. Great, so really contemplating the impact of electric vehicles in our region, both from access perspective. I think also, I'll just add here too, thinking about jobs, thinking about infrastructure, thinking about access, all new things to think about for electric vehicles. So excellent. And Colleen, I see you have your hand up. And hi, Colleen. I don't think you were here at the very beginning.
Oh, I've been here for a while, just listening. Thank you.
Oh, well, welcome. Thanks for being here.
And it's multitask at the same time. Anyway, well, I did raise my hand, sort of a follow-up to what Mike Bell had mentioned. Couple of things when we talk about emerging careers, we're looking at existing skill sets and then looking at how do we position an individual. So I guess I'm talking specifically about the work we're doing with Cyber Proud, is that there is a way to elevate that individual so that they're a more robust candidate. And technology changes so rapidly is that in working with our industry partners is that we've got to better a better understanding of what their needs are, and we're able to adapt a little bit better in recognizing where that individual may have some existing assets and what we refer to as institutional or domain experience. So what we're hearing from our industry partners is that, and I'm going to use healthcare as an example. If we were looking at creating a health IT program, moving somebody into doing data analytics in a health environment, when they have experience working in a hospital environment, it's easier for them to transition into a technical career within that particular sector or referring to domain. That's true in multiple things like retail, for instance, or hospitality, because we see that technology is driving a lot of new emerging careers. So similarly, we see that I'm going to use clean and green occupation. So if electric vehicle infrastructure requires an electrician to install a charging station, is there an opportunity where we can move individuals from being an electrician to being, specializing in that particular field? And I believe so. And I think this is where the opportunity lies, is looking at how do we transition our existing workforce towards those emerging careers. Anyway, thanks, Evan.
Great, thank you, Colleen. All right, so great thoughts and discussion around not just electric vehicles, but kind of the ways that climate adaptation and low carbon economy are impacting our labor force and our markets. I see Researcher Roundtable here. That is that's a group that Valley Vision convenes monthly to bring applied researchers together in the region to talk about data, opportunities, and challenges. And I would say to anyone here, if you're interested in getting involved in that, please message Isa or I, and we'll make sure to get you on that list. It's kind of a lunch and learn kind of structure. Okay, there may be identified more data approaches that inform job seekers and clients. These pieces are often disconnected from research and analysis. Not suggesting they be joined, but there may be work to be done together to better support service providers to connect job seekers with high road employment. This is more about career and student services. Yeah, great. So really getting kind of into those labor market connections between jobs and job seekers and clients. That's great. And I see a couple ideas here about who could be involved. The Center for Regional Change at UC Davis might be a helpful partner. Great thought. And UC Cooperative Extension, Resource Conservation Districts. Excellent. Any last comments on this page before we go to our last page? Okay, really appreciate everybody's thoughts and comments on this. We're going to look at question 4. Could we use this opportunity to build more local capacity for data and research needs, and what would that look like? So, and I'll just add a little more context to this to say that as we were prepping for this meeting, we were talking about how this, the CERF it's a one-time fund for planning, but it is really centered on some key data needs. So thinking about this one-time funding, what are the things we can do to really increase our ability as a region to use data for decision making, to analyze data, to really build stronger systems around data analysis and tracking and utilization. And so I think this conversation that we started earlier about good communication tools, whether that's storytelling or visualizations or other really creative ways of thinking about how we're communicating data, advancing our ability to do that seems to me like a good example of building some regional capacity. Some other ideas that people noted, gain a set of prioritized metrics for our region and create common and aligned ways to measure and share. So that's along similar lines, but really kind of use this as an opportunity to gain buy-in and capacity around a set of metrics. Find a way to engage communities in data and research, any opportunities for citizen science or outreach work with school districts, engaging high school kids to grow interest in data and research. Excellent. And I see Tiffany, you got your hand up.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So, I guess my answer to this would be resoundingly like, yes, as someone who like makes a living helping people understand how to use data and build their capacity to use data. But I'm also thinking one thing that I think could be really interesting outcome of this is if there was a way in developing those priority strategies, right? I don't know if part of the plan includes developing the metrics to track those strategies, but having those big policymakers and the people that kind of write policy have researchers talk with them about the kind of thinking that goes into looking at metrics, because oftentimes, right, I think probably every researcher in this room has an experience where you brought in to like understand the impact of policy or to measure policy, and things are written in such a way that they're so vague and they're so unarticulated that you really can't measure them at all, right? So then you have this whole conversation around re-articulating and redefining what that policy was really trying to achieve. So if nothing else, maybe there could be like a way for this to bridge the gap. So those people who are writing those policies and those plans and those frameworks can understand how working with researchers and having them in the room from the beginning can be a benefit. But then also working with, those applied researchers that work directly with community to be thinking about, with populations where research has done harm, quite frankly, and oftentimes research, for some populations is not ever been good. So thinking about how to use this process to also have those on the ground kind of grassroots researchers helping other researchers figure out how to bridge those gaps, right? And how to bring those two worlds together that often are working in parallel universes and could have a lot of synergies if they could bridge those gaps.
That's great. And I totally agree. I think if by the end of this process, we have better connections between data and policy making, that would be a huge success. Okay, and the last one I read before that was the citizen science and working with students, which is also a great way of thinking about collecting data and building capacity around research. Create more robust opportunities for researchers to work together, including growing the researchers roundtable, which we mentioned in a different slide. Assign people and organizations to active working groups focused on data and research based on an area and/or demographic constraints. And again, if anybody wants to say more about any of these slides, please jump in and do that. And then finally, agree to leverage a singular platform for compiling data on services, labor, job, and training. Yeah, that's great. Common and aligned platforms could be a great outcome. Okay, any final comments about this, about the ideas shared here?
Wanted to clarify my statement about signing people and organizations. Just seems like there's a lot of duplicate effort on asset mapping and resource research. Largely, in my opinion, it seems like because there's no dynamic permanent home for collecting that information and compiling that information. So everybody has it in their separate Google Drives, worksheets, spreadsheets, Salesforce platform type of platforms. So just coming up with a framework where, as a region, everybody's on the same page on how we can assign and distribute the labor for collecting the data and maintaining the data information.
Yeah. Thanks for that. That's that would be another really successful outcome if we were able to achieve that. That's great.
Actually, and a follow-up to that, maybe using this opportunity to visualize the relationships that we have between individuals and between organizations. So if we have a gap that needs to be filled, we look at our network and say, okay, Evan, this person, go reach out to them, let's get them connected. But do that in a way that it's easy to identify where the gaps are or how old the relationship is, or how, I guess, strong or weak the relationship is. So really getting to that perspective.
Great. So some kind of social network mapping.
Right.
Okay. All right. Any last thoughts before we put this Jamboard? Carrie.
So I don't know if it exactly fits in any of these, but you know, the extent to which we can reach out and partner with some of the, I think I said the one about the school districts here related to, you know, getting high school kids interested, but you know, the school districts, I know the Elk Grove Unified School District because that's where I am, largest one in the region, right? And they do have a Green Energy Technology Academy at one of their high schools, right? And so how do you utilize, you know, some of these existing things at that high school level to get that interest and that engagement in the green economy and these green jobs? And, you know, because not everybody is going to go to college. So getting that interest and that tech experience for kids at that level, you know, could interest them and get them into these jobs that could be better paying without having to go to college, right? Or could interest them in a college in a different way than they might have been thinking. So figuring out how to best engage with some of those sort of K through 12 school districts with some of this, maybe even around the data and research too, trying to figure out, are there classes that could be added at the high school level? Are there, you know, I feel like there's not always, you know, it's not till you get to college that you really start to understand about data, and we should be doing it sooner because those kids really do get it a lot easier, especially in, you know, today's environment with all of the tech stuff. And so how do we get them involved and interested in those areas at an earlier age, I think is helpful.
Yeah, thanks for that. I love that idea. Okay, so Isa, I think I'm going to turn it back to you for the next portion. We're really close to the end, everybody. So thank you for your engagement and patience. And I'm going to turn it back to you, Isa.
Thanks, Evan. We've got one final slide with just next steps. We want to just let folks know what's coming up next in this process. Thanks, Alana. So a few next steps. The first one is, of course, making available these follow-up materials from the session. So the slides, the recording, the Jamboards, we're going to keep open until 5 p.m. tomorrow. So you'll have some time to go back in and add some additional things. Folks who signed up for this committee but were not able to attend this meeting are also going to be able to do so. So all of that follow-up material and, as I said, a survey in addition to that Jamboard, I think we'll share out the Jamboard. If there are any additional sort of things folks want to add, we may share out a survey link as well, but there will be a method for folks to be able to add some additional input. And then the second one is, of course, we're going to take all of this input that folks gave on the values, on the different discussion questions, and all of this is going to feed into our application that we're going to submit from the region for the CERF planning phase. And then the third next step, we want to just kind of preliminarily flag for folks what the CERF program is calling this collective partnership agreement letter. So as part of our region's application, part of that process is kind of demonstrating to the state, you know, these are the folks who have engaged in this effort up to this point, and folks will also be continuing to plug into this in the planning phase. And we're putting all of that together in a kind of support letter to submit. Everyone's feedback here, everyone's input has been just really instrumental in helping us shape this. And we hope to continue to engage with you all as well as we move into the planning phase. So watch out for an email from us with specifics with regard to this collective partnership agreement letter. We hope that folks will sign on and commit to continuing to provide input and being part of this in the planning phase. And we'll have some more additional details on that, but just wanted to kind of give folks a heads up on that.
Yeah, and maybe I would just add, yeah, I think that the structure we have around these subcommittees is really great because it allows us to kind of dive in on one functional area of this grant. And it's a really big grant. It's not only, you know, it's quite a lot of money for planning. It's 8 counties. It's got a really like comprehensive scope. So it's been really helpful to break things up by these different subcommittees, but it also has the effect of kind of siloing what's going to be a much more holistic effort. So, I just want to note, one of the things we're doing in a different subcommittee is looking at a decision-making structure so that we can advance projects, so that we can distribute funds, so that we can really kind of, as we start this planning phase, we'll be able to enact and create a much more a collaborative body that's then able to lend capacity to different people's efforts and functions as part of that. So when you see a collective partnership agreement letter that we're asking people to sign on for, it will show the governance structure, it will show the more comprehensive vision and goals that have come as a result of the different subcommittee meetings, which includes, like I mentioned, governance, also community engagement, capacity building, and this research group. So I just wanted to note that, getting into the planning phase is when we'll be really looking for a process to create a more collective decision-making body and formulate our priorities, really starting with research, I think. And it's gonna, our research efforts will really complement our community engagement efforts. And from that, and from the collaborative decision-making body that we form, we'll be able to enact decisions and distribute funds to be able to carry out these functions. So I just wanted to note that as part of kind of the big picture of what we're aiming towards and the ways that these different pieces of feedback that we're getting will come together. I guess then, Issa, is there anything else from a housekeeping or any other point of view?
No, I don't think so. Folks can expect the kind of follow-up email with all the materials and links either end of day today or tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And that wraps us up.
Well, just really want to thank all of you so much. This has not only been a great conversation, it's highly beneficial for the program itself. I hope it's been valuable for you as we have these kind of sharing our thoughts and ideas around some of these big picture regional data issues. So thank you so much. We will be in touch, as Issa mentioned, and I hope we can all continue to work on this together.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.